and welcome to the 57th episode of the Dallas Housing Coalition's Housing for All webinar series. I'm Austin Holmes, your host and a Senior Development Associate at Dominium and a member of Dallas Housing Coalition Steering Committee. I am excited to be interviewing another young professional today, Andrew Warren, who also recently attended the Dallas Housing Coalition's second annual Housing Summit. Andrew is a building performance engineer at Smith Seckman Reed Inc., with a deep commitment to sustainability, community, and environmental stewardship. We'll be discussing his experiences with community organizing, his journey to become engaged with housing policy, and involvement with Dallas Area Interfaith, a broad based, nonpartisan coalition of congregations and institutions that organizes people to take collective action on issues like housing, education, and immigration. Andrew graduated from Southern Methodist University with a degree of mechanical engineering and lives in Dallas with his wife and enjoys the outdoors. Andrew, welcome to the webinar.
Austin, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I've been participating in and following the Housing Coalition's work for a few years now, and yeah, I think the Housing Coalition does some really important work in Dallas, and it's an honor to be here and uh, talk with you and yeah, talk about what's going on.
Definitely. Yeah, we're excited to have you here and really appreciate the kind words about Housing Coalition's work. Lots of work to be done. So lots of work to do. So to start out, can you maybe share a little bit about your journey into housing advocacy? You know, what sparked your interest from engineering into community organizing and policy work, and how you got plugged in with all of this?
Yeah, so I've always had uh, I'd say there's kind of two phases of this for me. Kind of how I initially got into some community organizing work around housing kind of stems from an interest in sustainability and energy efficiency. That's what I do. That's what I do professionally, working on sustainability and energy conservation for new and existing buildings. So that energy and sustainability has always been something that's pretty important to me. And uh, you know, probably around 2021, I read a book called The Walkable City by Jeff Speck.
Mm.
And one of the cases that he makes for how housing is kind of and transportation is kind of at the center of a lot of sustainability is he highlights this I think it's like the EPA headquarters out in Kansas City, and it's this brand new building, LEED Gold, super sustainable. But because they built it so far out in the city, everyone had to drive really far to get to it.
Mm.
And when you look at the total environmental impact of it, um, it actually ended up being greater than if they had done some kind of infill development of an existing building. So
Wow.
that that was a little bit of a wake up call for me that while I am doing this, work on, um, for sustainability in buildings, that's not the whole picture. And the more I pulled the thread on it and uh, saw that a lot of it's just tied to housing availability
Mm.
near the things that we do every day, like work or visit friends or participate in faith communities. Um, so that was kind of how I initially got into housing and like started paying attention. So got involved with a group called Dallas Neighbors for Housing that was a pretty big advocate for Forward Dallas 2.0 and
Mm.
parking reform. And a lot of that was kind of my intro into this world. Um, so yeah, then around this time last year, um, my church, First Presbyterian, just in downtown Dallas, started to get more involved with a group called Dallas Area Interfaith,
Mm.
which had been around Dallas for a while, but uh, had kind of stepped back a little bit during things I think got difficult with organizing during COVID, and so they've
Mm.
been rebuilding the organization since then. And so at the start of this year, yeah, DAI, as directed by, a few of the member institutions, which are, mostly faith institutions and educational institutions around Dallas, identified three areas of focus, for the future for DAI, and those areas were housing, immigration, and early childhood education. And
Mm.
so I got invited to this big rally, in January of this year, and honestly had no idea what I was showing up to. I was just told like, hey, you might be interested in this. So I
Yeah.
showed up, and there was 700 people from all over Dallas, um, and people who showed up just like wanting us to imagine something better for the city. So
Mm.
we heard stories about, uh, you know how how people are struggling to afford housing and, early childhood education. We heard stories about, uh, struggles with, immigration enforcement and things like
Hmm.
that. And being in that room with 700 people from all over
Yeah.
Dallas, like you can't help but feel the power and the potential of that many people coming together. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and so for me, like I'd already been doing some organizing around housing, and I was like,
Hmm.
hey, maybe this is something I can get involved with, and
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of kept showing up to stuff, and
Hmm.
uh, yeah,
And that's how
have
you got
really,
plugged in and really kind of bridge that gap between being an engineer but also being a community advocate.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, since then with DAI, uh, we've been meeting with, local officials around the city.
Hmm.
Even, we met with Brian, and he
Yep.
kind of schooled us on a lot of the housing affordability issues in Dallas.
Hmm.
And yeah, right now we're kind of working on building our policy goals, and, really focusing on issues that we think will help, make Dallas more affordable for the people in our congregation, and everyone in our city.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of where we're at with DAI. We just had a big rally November 11th. We had about 1,000 people there at Temple
Hmm.
Emmanuel, um, and yeah, it was. It, I'm excited about, what we've got going for us in the future.
Yeah, no, that sounds incredible. And I love how you kind of articulated that catalyst of reading that book and understanding it, because it's something we, as people who work with the built environment a lot, think about quite a bit. But it's really interesting to hear you put it so starkly and do that contrast where you have this amazing building that's literally supposed to be a testament to environmental efficiency and everything like that. You can pull out all the stops and do all the great things that are often infeasible in all sorts of other transactions, and get it built. And then whenever you look at the big picture, it's still worse for the environment, than if you had done basically a run of the mill, super normal, no bells and whistles, type of building, but you just did it in a location that doesn't require as car centric of a location. And that's really an amazing thing, especially for you as an engineer, to help us contextualize, because that really just goes to show, that we can make a lot of advances in science, and we can do a lot of things to really be building in a more sustainable way. But structurally, if we're not really rethinking how we're doing things and where we're doing things, it's really going to be all for naught, because it's not it's gonna be fancy and it's gonna win awards and everything like that, but it won't actually be better, if it's not structurally incorporated with the existing community, so that people can actually make use of things in a sustainable way, in a way that works with how they actually live today. And so that's, as an engineer, I mean, I'm sitting here like, dang, that's something really to think about. Or as in talking to someone who's an engineer, I'm not an engineer myself, but learning that from you is really huge. So I appreciate that, and it's a very interesting journey to this advocacy that you're now doing. So what you touched on a lot of things, your involvement with First Presbyterian Church, and how that has kind of been big for you. Can you speak on that a little bit more? Maybe just how the faith part of your involvement with First Presbyterian really kind of brought in this broader desire to really help the community and really be dialed in on housing justice whenever it's not necessarily a part of your day job.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, uh, uh, just like faith has always been a pretty big part of my family.
Hmm.
We grew up going to church 2, 3 times a week, and this is uh, kind of how we did things.
Hmm.
So it's always been something that's important for me. But I think the thing that's always uh, I don't know, stuck with me and kind of guided a lot of what I do is the idea about, you know, how all of us have dignity. And
Mm.
there are, um, a big part of my faith is, making sure that we're doing, doing the work to make sure that, yeah, there's justice in the community, and uh, that we're not leaving people behind.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and that's really a lot of what attracted me to First Presbyterian.
Hmm.
Around 2021, I uh, got married, and my wife and I were looking for a new uh, a place for us to kind of share together, that
Yeah.
was a home for us to practice our faith, and is something that we felt was aligned with our values. And yeah, when we showed up at First Presbyterian, and saw all the work that they were doing in Dallas, we've got so First Presbyterian um, has a ministry called the Stew Pot, which
Hmm.
is provides uh, various services to folks who are experiencing homelessness. So things from meal services, dental service, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive
Hmm.
housing. Um, that's something that's like really deeply ingrained um, in what First Presbyterian does.
Yeah.
So for us, seeing that, okay, this community is putting their money where their mouth is. They're walking
Mm.
the walk. That was really important for us, and a big part of why that place has been home for us for the last 4 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And shout out to them to really walking that walk and being impactful in the community. And it's interesting too that so quickly you say, okay, I want to be involved in the community. I want folks to have dignity. So quickly, that gets to housing. So quickly that gets to housing. And so I think that's just really an important thing to note for folks who generally share, you know, the desire to have folks have dignity, to be involved in the community. How it's important, for us talking about these issues, to understand how quickly that gets to housing, and so why these discussions and the work of the coalition and things you're doing are so important, because so quickly that gets to housing. So with your work, with Dallas Area Interfaith, what have you kind of learned there about building power and organizing diverse communities around housing? Can you speak to, what you've learned, really that kind of community involvement aspect and the organizing aspect? What have you kind of learned in terms of how to do that, how to build power appropriately and make something happen as it relates to organizing those groups?
Yeah, so I'm still pretty new to that space, but kind of what stood out to me, um, it's both easier than you would think and much harder than you would think. Like it's easier in the sense that if you get people together and share and get people talking about their experiences, their lives,
Hmm.
their things that are painful to them, and kind of have like
Yeah.
a public processing of pain. Because I
Mm.
think for me, like if there's something that's painful for me,
Hmm.
like for example, you know, in 2021, my rent went up. Like I've been renting for a while now. My rent went up $600 a month over the course of 2021.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, that was always something that like I kind of kept close to my chest. Like I'd complain to a friend every now and then.
Yeah.
Um, but what I realize is, there are people in my community who, maybe they bought their home in uh, this 70s, 80s, 90s,
Hmm.
or even, 2018 before home
Yeah.
prices went up. And um, if it's not part of someone's daily experience, then uh, they don't know how unaffordable housing has become in
Yeah.
Dallas. Um, so that was a big thing for me is um, being willing to share that pain with other
Yeah.
people. And what I uh, what I've seen is when I share that, that other people are like, yeah, like same thing happened to me. Like my rent went
Mm.
up $800 a month, and
Yeah.
um, I've heard stories from in some of DAI's early childhood education work. Um,
Hmm.
Housing is really deeply tied to that as well.
Yeah.
Where yeah, so it's yeah, that public processing of pain, I think, is something that's really, really um, healthy for our communities and kind of brings people together and gives us kind of like gives us fuel and
Yeah.
to to do the things that we want to do and change the things that we want to change.
Yeah. That's huge. That's definitely huge because I mean, in my view, it's a big part of why the coalition exists, right? Is to be able to bring awareness to these things because folks, might consider, that pain that you just mentioned and appreciate your, braveness and willingness to even share that on this webinar. But the that sort of pain and that sort of frustration, folks often are probably just dealing with it internally, like you said, and just saying, all right, it's something I got to deal with, and then moving on with it. But and then just treating it as a personal problem, but not really understanding that, while it is a personal problem that folks will personally have to address somehow in order to stay housed, and that's the core of the issue. It is also a part of a bigger structural issue with housing affordability. And so I think that you speaking to it and you sharing it with others and then giving other folks strength to share their pain and share their issues and talk about it really helps people understand and look, instead of just looking internally, you kind of can look to the left, look to the right and say, oh, well, maybe I'm not, it's not that I signed a bad lease or I, just have this thing that I'm super down on my luck. It's that, there's a structural problem that we're dealing with that yes, I need to come up with that $600. I need to stay housed. I need to figure that out. That's a personal problem that's going to be hard for me, but we also need to all work together to figure out structural fixes so that, if this is happening to me, it's happening to you, it's happening, all these people, then maybe there are ways that we can structurally improve housing affordability as well. And so, it's a smaller picture issue that people have to address, but then it's also a bigger picture issue that groups like yours and like the Housing Coalition and broadly the city of Dallas needs to address as well. So that's a huge takeaway. What from your perspective in terms of what you've learned through your advocacy work and getting out in the community, but also through your perspective, understanding engineering and everything, what is the most urgent housing challenge facing Dallas today? And where do you see the greatest opportunities for change? We know affordability broadly, and that's a challenge, but what you could kind of pinpoint it a little bit more within that overarching concern. What would you say is kind of the most urgent housing challenge facing Dallas today, and the greatest opportunity for some change that we could see?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is.
is is I mean it the cost of housing is, I mean, it's a complicated issue with a lot of causes and a lot of potential solutions.
Hmm.
And in yeah, so I don't know, a few of the things that I'm kind of focused in on, and
Hmm.
honestly, like also trying to learn more about so that
Yeah.
we can establish some more clear policy goals for Dallas Area Interfaith.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think lack of affordable housing for families that are making less than 50% AMI.
Mm.
Um, uh, Everything that I've heard about that is, talking with developers, folks who are working in that space, is lack of funding. Um,
Mm.
and I know the Communities Foundation is making a big investment into affordable housing. I'm
Certainly.
excited to see what they do with that. Um,
Hmm.
uh, another thing that I actually learned more about this at the housing summit, and have been kind of meeting with folks and talking with folks recently, is uh, about displacement in vulnerable communities.
Hmm.
Specifically, uh, some of the things that groups like Wesley Rankin Community Center are working on with property tax relief,
Yeah.
programs that other folks are working on with home repair programs, and heirs property. That's uh, yeah, it was really eye-opening for me at the housing summit, um, to hear uh, how widespread, something like heirs property is, and how
Yeah.
potentially it's like kind of how much danger is associated with that, and how vulnerable that can make a family living in a home that's
Yeah.
under heirs property. Um, so those are probably the two that I'm uh, personally most focused on with DAI.
Yeah.
For me personally, just kind of
Hmm.
selfishly, I'm
Hmm.
excited for reforms to see more missing middle housing. I think that's
Mm.
my best shot at being able to buy a home in
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what zoning reform and the land use reform does for that.
Definitely.
But
I
but
appreciate
yeah,
you calling those out. I mean, those are very big things, and those are definitely great opportunities. Though some of the things, like the home repair issues that could help fend against displacement, huge. Huge. Being able to help folks there, as well as the missing middle housing. And then you're 100% right. It's the challenges of building housing for folks under 50% of area median income are very, very real, because ultimately, it's a lot of this stuff is a math problem, and so it's very, very challenging to make some of those things work, especially with where interest rates are, and construction pricing is, and everything like that. And so, yeah, no, you're definitely highlighting some key challenges that we do have some opportunities to hopefully address through some of the various things that have been being announced. So as a young professional and as a person of faith, working to better this housing situation in Dallas overall. What can you say to other young professionals and other people of faith, to encourage them to take a meaningful role in shaping housing policy and advocacy within Dallas? What else can folks like you do?
yeah, I'd say show up, and like I mean, that's the hardest part,
Hmm.
um, is knowing where and when to show up. So yeah, I mean, I'd recommend paying attention to what the Dallas Housing Coalition is doing. I think the Housing Coalition does a great job of like bringing people in and connecting people to to others who are really, really deeply in this work. Um, yeah, and then the other thing would be, talk about what your experience is.
Yeah.
Especially for younger folks, uh, it's not just young people who are
Hmm.
affected by the high cost of housing, but
Hmm.
in my experience, it seems like that's generally who's most aware of it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for younger folks to share their experiences with housing with older generations. Yeah, I think
Those are
I think it's pretty
great
important.
steps. Yeah, I mean, and there are all sorts of folks who are impacted by the lack of housing affordability in lots of different ways, old and young. But the young aspect, particularly on the home buying side, is very, very clear. I mean, you just have to look at, what's the average. You just look at what's the average mortgage rate, and what's the average home price, and what's the average time that each generation bought their first home, and then you can pretty simply plot it all out and see, okay, well, this generation was dealing with these prices and these rates at this age, whereas this generation is dealing with these prices at these rates at this age, and you can kind of see what's happening. So it's definitely, I think that's a particularly good call out, particularly to the younger folks and people of faith, to talk about the experience, and to kind of start getting involved, because it's not just happening to you. It's not just happening to any other person or to me. It's happening to lots of people. It's a structural issue that needs to be discussed and needs collaboration in order to ultimately make headway, and make progress. Are there any other first steps that you'd recommend folks take, or any other things that as we come to the close of this webinar, that you'd like to leave folks with, to kind of encourage them to get going and dive in, even though it might be scary to do so. I'm imagining whenever you're stepping out of your engineering lens, taking that first step, going to that first meeting was a little tough to look around and see what it was like. I know it was for me. Any other kind of support or words of wisdom you can offer to someone who has taken those steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I I think it's important to just kind of get out there and ask questions,
Mm,
and be really curious. Yeah, I think the people who are working on this stuff, or working on like all areas of housing affordability and housing justice, everyone that I've encountered has been very willing to share their knowledge, share their experiences, and most people are hungry to like have more
yeah,
people be brought into the work. Um, so yeah, I think it's yeah, I think it's very okay to show up and not
yeah,
really know what's going on and ask questions and
yeah,
try to learn more about this. So that's
yeah.
really the best way to do it.
That's awesome. I mean, y'all heard it here from Andrew. It's okay to not know the answers. It's okay to just have questions, or not even have the questions yet, and have the questions start bubbling up as you go to your first meeting. I think it's really just about taking that first step, just saying, whatever, whether it's your neighborhood church, you hear about a meetup, you see something on the Dallas Housing Coalition, or whatever it is, just say, hey, I'm gonna just do one thing for this. I'm gonna just show up. I'll say nothing. I'm gonna be in the back. I'm gonna be quiet, but I'm gonna just show up, and then let it go from there. But I think the more folks that we can get involved in talking about this stuff, the better built environment, the better housing situation we're gonna have overall here in Dallas. And so I really appreciate you, Andrew, sharing your experience doing exactly that. And I know we're gonna stay in touch and keep talking, and over the years, I'm sure there'll be lots of amazing things that we get to collaborate and talk about. As it relates to improving housing affordability, particularly here in Dallas. So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. For sure. We at the Dallas Housing Coalition certainly look forward to continuing to work with you and with Dallas Interfaith, and all of the groups dialed in on addressing housing in 2026 and beyond. And we really appreciate all that you do. So before we sign off today, we do want to encourage all of our audience members to be on the lookout for Dallas Housing Coalition's upcoming events, including a member meeting in January, a virtual webinar in February, and public event in March with just talked about it, missing middle housing author Dan Haralek. It's going to be awesome. So please follow our social media for more updates and stay connected to the Housing for All webinar series. Visit our website, DallasHousingCoalition.com, to subscribe to all our communications and become a member of the coalition today. It's real easy, folks. Go out there, become a member. We're excited to keep growing. So thank you all for tuning in to our 57th Housing for All webinar, and the final episode of 2025. It's been a lot of fun. We've got a lot more exciting things for y'all in 2026. We wish you a happy new year, happy holidays, and thank you for tuning in, where we discuss on here whether Dallas is